Hello, everybody. If you are joining us, you may wonder if you're used to the Kubefirst life, like, am I at the right place? Because there is a new countdown, and it's coming from a mistake of mine. I probably deleted the previous one, and I was like 2 minutes before the show, like, damn, I don't have any countdown anymore in the StreamYard, and I found one that was free and actually pretty nice. I love the
I got
previous.
to tell you, Fred, that was a snappy start to Kubefirst Live. I'm twice as excited as I was.
Exactly. So I think this one's gonna stay.
I'm
Yeah,
in.
I think
I'm
this
in.
one's gonna
Let's do it.
stay. I mean, like I've done the same thing on my other show, the Devro show, where I changed the countdown and I made a music that made me want to dance. And like the first 10 shows, I was just like dancing. At the beginning, we went live, and I was like, "Hey, I just want to continue to dance, so let's start the show in like 30 seconds because the party is in the house." So, on that note, welcome everybody. Welcome to Cube First Live, another edition. It seems like it's been forever, but it's been only 2 weeks. For me, it seems like it was far too long since the last show. And
Yeah,
we have a pretty good show today. Super excited about the show. We
pretty
gonna
good.
go
What do you mean,
Digital Ocean all the way.
pretty good? This is the DigitalOcean show. This is better than a pretty good show, Fred.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And Jared agrees with the new intro. He loves it. And that was a 5 minutes search on Google before the show, and I think it ended up pretty well. So yeah, no, actually, that's gonna be okay. I'm sorry, I said pretty good. That's gonna be the one of the most amazing show we're gonna have because it's gonna be only about DigitalOcean. If you are new to Kubefirst, we support DigitalOcean is one of the cloud that we support, and we're going to talk a little more about that in a couple of minutes. If you are not new to Kubefirst, we've been supporting DigitalOcean for a while. It was a beta for a while at the beginning. We moved it in production, and we realized not long ago that hey, we never did like a DigitalOcean focused show after we moved to production. So we were past due time to do that show, and this is happening today. So, pretty excited to have a guest today. So, Bikram, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the folks watching us right now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Fred and John, and thanks to all our viewers who have joined today. By the way, Fred, I love how you started the intro. Something very unique.
Everybody's in.
It is a little bit like a Q first signature. We do things a little bit different than like other people's in many ways, but from my point of view, and maybe I have some bias, it's usually pretty good. We're doing like things that people are not doing in different ways, but we're building great software. We're having fun, and I think at the end of the day, this is what we need to do. So
Like it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
thanks for being here. Thanks for being our guest today. It's always
I can do a
amazing to have
quick intro
nice
if that's
people.
okay. I can do a quick intro if that's okay.
Would love
Yeah,
that.
So,
yeah,
yeah,
please.
yes. So, hello everyone, and my name is Bikram Gupta. I am the product manager for Kubernetes and App Platform at DigitalOcean. I have been working in the cloud native space for over 5 years and really fortunate to have worked in Kubernetes security, networking, and then developer tooling, and then marketplace and partnerships. And more recently, I'm also focusing on platform as a service, like how do we really make it easy for developers. I'm a strong believer in making Kubernetes simple for developers. And that's the primary reason why I wanted to be part of this discussion. And hope all of you are going to enjoy this as well.
Thank you so much, Bikram. Yeah,
That's
we're equally
that's
excited
amazing.
to have you on the show today. We share that passion of enabling new users to Kubernetes and sort of helping launch them on their Kubernetes journey, their cloud native journey. It's got a lot of legs to it when you start adopting Kubernetes. There's a lot of new considerations and new mindsets to to come up to speed on and then implement in your platform. And it can take a lot of time. And that's what spawned the creation of the Kubefirst platform, was that length of time that it takes to go from not really knowing Kubernetes in your shop to tackling cloud native platforms well. And that's why we tried to build the product that we did. So great to share that passion with you and share some screen time with you today. Yeah, it would be. Sorry, go ahead, Fred.
No, I was just going to say, like, for me, it's an amazing show for two things. Like, we're going to talk a little bit about Kubefirst, which makes our life easier. And I don't know if you said that before the show, John, before we started and go live, or at the beginning of the show, but I used to work at DigitalOcean a couple of years ago. I was a developer advocate. And I left not because I didn't like the product nor the people. I had like other reasons. So I've always been a big fan of DigitalOcean. So that's really a sweet spot for me right now, talking about a cloud I love with like a GitOps platform like that I love, open source, just sharing the love to help people have a better and easier experience when it comes to cloud native. So folks, if you are new to DigitalOcean, you're going to learn a lot more about the platform today. You're going to see all the advantages and why you should think about using DigitalOcean as a cloud when it comes to, putting your stuff out there. So with that said, I want to hear more about DigitalOcean. So I think, Bikram, we're going to give the mic to you, and please tell us who are DigitalOcean, what is DigitalOcean, why should we use it, and yeah, mic is yours, the stage is yours.
Absolutely. And I hope that everybody can see the screen.
We can, we'll be good.
Awesome. And I'm hoping that our viewers are already familiar with DigitalOcean. If not, highly urge you to try this out. It's an amazing cloud platform. We cater to developers, SMBs, and startups. That's our sweet spot. And when it comes to our value proposition, one of our core value, and Fred, you'll remember that very well, is what we call as DO love, or DigitalOcean love. In spirit of that, we really focus on simple user experience, a very predictable pricing, and above all, the love for our customers. We really care for our customers. I mean, that's our primary value proposition.
And you know what? It's the first time we have a guest, and I can vouch totally for that, because been there, done that. Like, I was an employee, like every other guest that say like those kind of things. I'm like, yeah, I believe you, because maybe I've seen it as a customer, but like I lived it as an employee, and that's really true. And by the way, Douglas Mendez was saying, Douglas, by the way, thanks for joining us again. Every effort to make teams onboarding to Kubernetes easier is valuable and greatly appreciated. And you know what? I agree with what you said. Exactly. So giving you back the mic, Bikram.
Yeah. And before going into Kubernetes, I just want to briefly summarize the compute options which are available in most clouds today. On the very left, you have virtual machines. Virtual machines, as we know, are fully unmanaged, but you are in full control of everything right from the operating system. You can decide to pick a CPU, which are droplets. You can decide to pick a GPU, which is paper space. Obviously, you have to do the automation and heavy lifting of running your applications and scaling. On the rightmost side, you have App Platform. Now, the beauty of App Platform and similar products is that you just bring in your code or functions or container images. We'll build the image, we'll run it for you, we'll monitor it, we'll upgrade it for you, so that you can just focus on your coding and on your business.
And Bikram, if I can add on that, I was at DigitalOcean when DigitalOcean was building the app platform, and I saw like the first beta version. And it's along the line of like what we're saying about making cloud native easier. This one is making life for developer easier, because like what I do best as a developer is code, create my application, and now I can like just put my source code and like things are working for me, you take care about like installing and managing everything. So that's a pretty cool product too. So I know it's not related to exactly what we're gonna mostly of what we're gonna talk to do, but I just wanted to add the fact that like it's amazing. Everything that makes life easier so we can concentrate on what we do best is a good thing in my mind.
Totally. I totally agree with you, Fred. And now the sweet spot in the middle, which is the DigitalOcean Kubernetes or docs. And obviously, running your own Kubernetes is nowadays like it's okay to do, but you should almost always try and adopt a managed Kubernetes. You have lots and lots of providers. And the beauty of that is we take care of setting up the Kubernetes cluster for you, upgrading it, monitoring it for you so that you can really focus on building and scaling your applications. And we'll talk more about what it takes to go from running Kubernetes to really getting production ready a little bit later. I also want to say that there may not be a one-size-fits-all situation. As an example, I recently spoke to a observability vendor who are running on DigitalOcean. They get all the IoT device logs, which are aggregated through a droplet, get stored in an S3 bucket called Spaces, and then they are using the backend processing jobs on Kubernetes to mine the logs, create insights and intelligence, and then rolling out the customer portal on Kubernetes itself. And so if you can do everything on one platform, that's great, but it's almost always dictated by faster time to market and what your business needs. We have thousands of customers who are running on DigitalOcean. I just want to give a few examples here. Like Snippets is a interactive video data platform. Bright Data, they are hopefully some of you are using them. They are a leading web data platform. You get lots and lots of insights from them. And then NitroPack, they are more than a CDN. If you have a WordPress website or any other CMS, they can, with 1 or 2 clicks and configuration, you can significantly expedite your website or improve the performance of your website. Now, all of these customers are essentially getting the value, which is a very simple user experience, getting started in a matter of weeks. And then many customers need significant amount of data transfer limits. And I have hardly seen any customer in last 3 years at DigitalOcean who had to pay for additional data transfer. I mean, we give a extremely reasonable amount of data transfer limit with every virtual machine or every node.
That's great.
We have thousands of customers who are running who are building out different type of applications, and a lot of them are building out SaaS services. We have customers who are building out AI, data analytics, e-commerce, blockchain, web scraping, and digital marketing, for example. Now, I'm assuming that our viewers have some level of familiarity with Kubernetes, so I'm not going to go through line by line. But let's just look at an example of an EdTech or educational technology provider. Typically, they will have the classes which are extremely busy during daytime, nighttime, no load. Likewise, there may be certain classes who are in heavy demand and some classes have very less demand. So from a problem standpoint, they need to be able to really appropriately reduce the number of infrastructure nodes based on the demand, overall demand. At nighttime, you really don't have demand. Also, they should be able to really allocate the right amount of CPU and memory to the classes which have a lot of students attending. And that's where Kubernetes has cluster autoscaler and horizontal pod autoscaler. Like this, Kubernetes provides a lot of primitives, which really helps you build a pretty solid platform. And the key thing here is that ultimately, if you are a growing business, you want customization, automation, and scale. Kubernetes is just a platform, and it has a huge ecosystem of tools. Now you have to connect the dots. You have to take the platform, you have to put the right set of tools so that you can get the best from the Kubernetes. I'd say that that's the summary of this slide. Kubernetes can solve all the problems for you. You just have to use the right set of tools from the ecosystem and configure those appropriately.
Yeah, that's a
add
good
something?
resume. That's a good summary. I'm good.
Okay, good.
You did a good job.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about DigitalOcean Kubernetes. Maybe you can call it self-marketing. I started by saying that DO love is our core value, and one thing that we have taken care is with one click you can create a cluster, and then you have all the options available. You can easily add a load balancer, you can easily add managed databases, block storage. Everything is a matter of it's all nicely packaged into the into the DOKS cluster itself. And then in our marketplace, you have the necessary add-ons that will help you get production ready. Like you want Nginx, you want Grafana, all those things are available to you. When it comes to the cost, we take that very seriously. Every time I have a meeting with the team, we are very focused on helping our customers. And I want to give two simple examples that are like more like very simple example, but would make a lot of sense. Let's say you are running a 20 node cluster, and many of you would be running probably 20, 100 node clusters as well. When you are upgrading your cluster, what we do under the hood, and you have to you don't have to configure anything. We don't ask you to do anything. We allocate 10 extra nodes to your cluster, and the node that are actually needed. If you are using a 4 CPU 8 GB, we allocate 10 extra 4 CPU 8 GB, so that we can move your workloads from the current nodes or current release to these new nodes that are added. And then we can upgrade your worker nodes and then move the workloads back. Why? Because there's zero downtime, right? And we don't charge anything at all. We don't even ask, you won't even notice it in your bill, nothing. And under the hood, that's what we do. If you are running a 2 or 3 node cluster, we just allocate exactly same number of additional nodes, we do it for you. If you assuming there are 10 or 20 upgrades or 3 or 4 upgrades in a month, we don't bill you for that. Another thing is, I have seen customers who are going through hundreds of thousands of auto-scaling events in a month. Our billing clock for Kubernetes starts when the node is ready. It doesn't start when the node is powered on. Simple thing. I don't know even if we document it or not, but that's something which is in the code. The billing clock starts when the node is ready. So like this, we are always thinking about how we can help our customers and really give be very transparent as much as possible.
Transparency is key when you want to trust where you're going to put your code. So I appreciate that. It's a great thing.
And, hearing you describe some of the details about what's going on under the hood during an upgrade, for example, that's just an anecdotal example of why so much of the Kubernetes community believes in managed Kubernetes, because those operations of managing the control plane and going through, node drains and getting all your pods moved over to the new nodes and all of that busy work is work that if you're managing your own Kubernetes cluster, that's your responsibility. And these managed cloud provider implementations of Kubernetes that pull that control plane out of your control and up into the cloud really does add a ton of benefit for particularly if you're new to Kubernetes. But even if you're a seasoned veteran like I am, managing Kubernetes the hard way, as Hightower would describe it, is difficult work. And offloading that burden to the cloud is a huge part of why Kubernetes adoption is not such a severe decision anymore, because a lot of the hard mechanics are now the responsibility of the cloud implementation of that control plane instead of your responsibility as a Kubernetes administrator. So just wanted to call that out. Completely agree that there's a lot of really tough stuff that DigitalOcean's doing a great job at in the control plane.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now let's get to the difficult part. When you come to DigitalOcean or any managed provider, for that example, you created a cluster, 2 or 3 clicks, you think you are good to go, right? But let's say if you want to run an application, guess what? You have to set up a load balancer. If you're running many applications or many domains, you have to set up an ingress. Then you have to think about the observability, you have to think about security. And then if you have 3 or 4 or 10 developers, you need to think about a proper CI/CD. All those things start to add up. And at DigitalOcean, we call it Kubernetes adoption journey. By now, I have worked with, I won't say thousands, I've worked with at least 10 plus decent-sized enterprise customers and about 50 plus SMB and startups, etc. And I have an idea of how they work. And based on that, we built this adoption journey. And it's a journey. It means you don't have to just go step by step. Things can be done incrementally, and you can also get started with a small milestone and then can start to add up, start to improve your maturity as your production and as your business grows. I'll try to keep it brief because I'm sure John would cover a lot more as we are going through the Kubefirst live walkthrough. Discovery is fairly simple. Fred, you want to say something?
No, sorry, that was stupid. I was going to say, I don't know if John's going to cover a lot of this, but for sure he's going to talk a lot. So.
Okay, for sure. So let's start with the first part. In the discovery part, obviously, simple things like, hey, what kind of, do I need 1 CPU, 2 gigabyte, 10 nodes, or do I need 10 CPU, 20 gigabyte, 1 node, right? And things like, what kind of load balancer do I need? Do I need an ingress? Do I need a managed database or run on my own MongoDB inside Kubernetes? If I'm using multi-cloud, do I use a shared S3 storage, or what do I do? So things like that are something that you just have to plan. And what I've seen with most of our DigitalOcean customers is that unless they are migrating from VM to Kubernetes, they have a clear idea of what they want. If they are coming from one Kubernetes provider to us, they have a very clear idea. And it's just a matter of same day thing. And then let's get to the development part. Most of you probably know by now, when you want to deploy something to Kubernetes, you write the code in your VS Code or something, you build the image, you deploy the image onto Kubernetes. Very different from when I'm building a Node.js or Python and typing code and seeing the results. Ideally, you should strive to get there so that your developers should not feel like they're working on Kubernetes. They write code, they see results, right? Otherwise, in the early days, 4 or 5 years back, I don't know, John and Fred, you may know, people used to write code, submit to Git repo, image used to get built, that used to get pulled, and they call it outer loop or something. And it was crazy, like writing code and 5 minutes to see it in action.
Yeah, yep.
Right. And you really have to fix it. And for that, you just have to use the right tool. You have a lot of Scaffold and Tilt and DevSpace and various tools which are telepresence, which are already there. And this is something sooner you do, the better, because it's so much better for your developers to do 100 iterations in a day as opposed to 10. And then CI/CD. CI/CD is a journey. And what I have seen working with at least my set of customers is that if you're in production, if you're serious, have a staging cluster. It really helps. And then have your automation so that when you are writing and committing the code to the dev branch or whatever, you have automated tests and then they get deployed to staging. But after that, to roll it out to production, you basically elevate that manually and roll out those changes or deploy those changes once a day or once a release or whatever that works for you until you really achieve a great level of maturity. And here, I think John will talk about the strategy and why GitOps is so much better. And we recommend that as well. And then in production, obviously, standard challenge across anything that you deploy. You have to think about load balancer, performance, security, auto scaling, backup and disaster recovery, and all those things. And here, whether you rely on a SaaS third party or you use some add-ons, if you have the right tools that can help you really quickly install those and somehow build the right dashboards, trust me, you will save from 1 month or lots of work down to 1 hour or 2-3 hours. It takes time, and I have done hands-on myself. And if you're interested, I can share the links offline. And then finally, scale. I have seen customers who started in DigitalOcean Kubernetes grow to $10,000 per month and then come back to $6,000. And what happens is once the business starts to grow, it stabilizes at a point. Now they think about, okay, how do I really optimize it? How do I fine tune it? How do I save my cost? Am I using the right type of node sizes? And all those things really have a few goals. You are optimizing your platform and you are saving cost.
Yeah, and this is something you can do also, or it's possible to do when you're in clouds where you have like fixed pricing and you know what you're going to pay at the end of the month. Because like if I go on, let's not name names, but like on other clouds where it depends on the resources you use and it can grow and go small, and like you can end up with a big bill even before having the time to think about what you want to optimize or not. So there's a great benefits there also.
Completely agree. Okay, so now let's get to the key point. Why I really wanted to join this live stream. I started while the Kubernetes adoption journey itself is something that you do through a set of milestones. The core thing here is that Kubernetes is here to stay. It's a base platform. However, to go from that base platform to something that your developers can use and they really enjoy using it, you need to put in a lot of work. You need to use the right set of tools, and you need to have opinionated configurations. That can make a lot of difference. That can change what can take 3 to 4 months down to 1 week, as an example, right? And that's where I felt that Kubefirst comes in, and they can really help you go from day 0 to production really fast. With this, even I am keen to learn from you, John and Fred, and over to you.
Yeah, John, I'm you too. We were hearing you type.
He caught me cheating on you guys. That's terrible. That's terrible. I apologize for the click clacks. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Bikram. That was a great overview of DigitalOcean, and I can't express enough how true your explanation rings to me about the cloud native adoption journey. It's fraught with a whole bunch of decisions. Frankly, just choosing the right cloud native tools for your Kubernetes cluster is an exhausting operation and hard to get right, even if you're really good at all of it. When we first started the Kubefirst project, we had my co-founder Jared and I had just been through a 1-year exercise of building out a Kubernetes platform from scratch. And we thought that because we knew it, and because we knew how the tools fit together and we knew the right tools to put together, that we would just be able to leave that company, go to the next company, and in a matter of seconds, minutes, hours, I don't know, maybe days, we'd be able to get that same platform off the ground. And it is just not true. There's a lot of hard work, coordination, mechanics, automation that needs to be built. You have IAC concerns, you have user access concerns, you have which applications you're going to choose for storing your secrets, for storing those users, for negotiating CI/CD, for delivering updates to your cluster. It's just a ton of decision making that you have to do to get this rather empty Kubernetes cluster into something super valuable for your organization. And at the end of that journey, you will end up with something far more valuable to you than anything that you could hand roll without Kubernetes, in my opinion. I've been on the front line of building those systems that have to do the same stuff that Kubernetes does. And I'm here to tell you that it's easier to do it with Kubernetes than without it by a lot. But it does require you to build out a carefully crafted set of cloud native technologies and stitch them together the right way. And it takes some time to get that from scratch to valuable to your organization. And so at Kubefirst, we have built something that helps fast track that journey for you. We did it in a way where you're in full control of the end result. We don't SaaS host it. It's yours to keep. You run it in your cloud. It's all open source free tools. There's a couple exceptions in there. Terraform is open code, not technically open source. You could say the same of HashiCorp Vault. But nevertheless, great high value, enterprise ready, free tier technologies that are stitched together in a way that should be able to give your organization immediate value out of Kubernetes. And then if there's a technology that we chose for the default platform that you wish was a little bit different, it's your GitOps repository and you get to change it to whatever you want. So you can get rid of Ingress Nginx and put on traffic. You can do whatever you want to do to the platform once you do your provisioning operation. And we hope that that's going to provide you the safety that you need to buy into our platform. That is a platform that truly has no ceiling. We've installed the Kubefirst platform into organizations that have aspirations of moving into clouds that we don't even support. And they've been able to move into those clouds with no problem at all. And it's all because of the way that we've modeled our extensibility patterns in our architecture. So I guess at this point, if you guys don't have anything better to do, let's hop in and sort of show.
I mean, the only thing it made me realize that, like, since HashiCorp changed their licenses, they kind of like screw up our product pitch a little bit. Because we're always saying, like, with all the open source product that you like on your cluster, like with all the open source and 2 open core product that you like on the cluster.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, our tagline came before their decision. So, no, jokes aside. So what we're looking at here on my screen, this is probably the easiest way for users to get started on Kubefirst on the DigitalOcean platform. At marketplace.digitalocean.com/apps/Kubefirst, you'll find this nice, easy install app button that you can click. And if you have a DigitalOcean account already, you can just choose a new cluster, hit install. It'll create your what we call cluster 0. It's like your foundational cluster for the provisioning operation. It'll build that in your DigitalOcean cloud and give you some instructions on how you can connect to it. I'm going to skip that because it takes a few minutes and instead show you. And the other way to get the provisioner tool is you can brew install Kubefirst, which is a CLI that we have. And you can run the command Kubefirst launch up, and that will create this environment for you. The same web application is what you connect to from DigitalOcean Marketplace, except when you do it in DigitalOcean Marketplace, it doesn't include this first screen to ask what cloud you want to provision to, because it already knows you're in DigitalOcean. So
This
if I
screen, this
just,
screen is becoming sexier and sexier every time we demo it on live stream.
I know, the cloud expansion is real. And we love being able to, and we're only getting started, because multi-cloud is right at our fingertips. And if multi-cloud is part of your architectural story, we are going to be able to accommodate multi-cloud ecosystems with relative ease. So this provisioner tool basically asks you what Git provider and cloud provider you want to use. We'll assume GitHub and DigitalOcean for this demo. And it asks you a handful of questions. It's just a simple 1, 2, 3 step. And you have to basically tell it what cloud account you want to provision to, and what cluster details you have for its placement. So what region you want to put it in, what DNS you want to hook it into. And then you, at the end, let's call this a trash example, because we're not actually going to use this. When I hit create cluster here, this is the magic button, and that's all you have to do to get everything that we're going to show you for the rest of the broadcast was derived from that simple 1, 2, 3 step process. So now there were a couple prerequisite steps. You have to have a DNS, and you have to wire that DNS into the DigitalOcean ecosystem, or we also support Cloudflare as a DNS provider. But one way or another, whatever DNS you're hooking it into, you do have to have that wired in correctly and serving traffic. So I'm not going to sit here on the screen for too long, but just to sort of describe what's going on, this is the concise high-level view of the provisioning operation. And right now what we're doing from this cluster 0 instance is we're actually provisioning your permanent cluster that's backed by GitOps, that's backed by infrastructure as code, so that you have a good permanent starting point that's got all the mechanics that you need to be able to tell the story that we're going to be able to tell today. This concise view also has a verbose view over here. And in this verbose view, you'll be able to see details of the execution. So it's going to go through, create your DigitalOcean network and cloud dependencies, and then it's going to create a Docs cluster. All of that Terraform, you'll be able to see the output of that Terraform in this verbose view. And the process takes about, we'll call it 20 minutes in DigitalOcean. And the end result of this provisioning, we're not going to sit here for 20 minutes and watch it. The end result is a screen that looks just like this. And it says, congratulations, you're all set. And it also gives you a password that you can copy for your initial bot administrator of the platform. And that's what allows you access to all the tools initially. Once you get into that platform, it's important to onboard yourself, to onboard the rest of your team. And all of that is just Terraform pull requests. We'll get into that just a little bit. But once you click this button here, Open Kubefirst Console, it brings you to this screen. This is your login screen for Kubefirst. And you need to authenticate with HashiCorp Vault. We set up Vault with an SSO OIDC provider so that you can have single sign-on through all the platform tools on minute number 1. So I'm going to log in here. And actually, let me, well, that's fine. So we start you out in the cluster management screen. The cluster management screen is trying to show you that there's a management cluster that's been provisioned. And we've also created 3 additional clusters. Now, these are not normal Kubernetes clusters. These are V clusters that live inside your management cluster, which is a neat way to experiment with Kubernetes cluster level isolation. and also allows you an opportunity to explore Kubefirst cluster management. With cluster management, and this is eventually part of our pro tier. Right now, we're in an open beta period where everything is just free for everybody to use. And we expect for virtual clusters to remain free forever. But physical clusters are eventually going to be behind our paywall. So just keep your guard up about that. That's not to say that if you use a physical cluster and you don't want to pay for it, everything about the clusters and the GitOps and the orchestration and the IAC and everything is going to continue to run. You'll just stop using our user interface. So to show you an example of what that looks like, you can create a new physical cluster. We'll call it live stream. Oh, that's the environment field. Sorry about that. We'll skip the environment and call the cluster live stream. We'll place this one in New York City one as well. And if I can hop over to DigitalOcean for a quick second before I do that, let me hop into my cloud console. And in here, if we go to Kubernetes, we'll see that there are currently just these two clusters, Management Live, and another one, Chad Management. We'll ignore that one. Management Live is the one that we're using right here.
Let's ignore Chad.
Yeah, let's ignore the Chad one. But what I'm going to do here is create a new live stream cluster. And when I hit create cluster, this is going to do a couple things. Now, you might think that what this is doing is proactively in the back end running some Terraform or something like that, maybe doing some kubectl applies or Helm installs to get some stuff in. It's truly not doing anything proactively to your infrastructure. All Kubefirst does in its user interface ever is interact with your GitOps repository as a Git repo. And our expectation is that you have Argo CD wired up in a way where it will read those changes to your Git repository and react by making the appropriate changes. So if you say you want a new cluster, it'll create a new cluster. If you say you need a new app in that cluster, it'll create an app in that cluster. And it takes a lot of complex engineering in order to get all of that working. And that's where that 6, 9, 12 months of Kubernetes adoption sort of disappears on you. But with the Kubefirst platform, we'll start you out with all these mechanics in place in a way where you can sort of make changes to it from here, and it's very easy to use and move forward.
We take care of the complexity for you, and you end up with like a product that is like easy to use.
That's right. That's right. So let's take a look real quick at the GitHub cluster configuration in your GitOps repo. So before I actually get into that, back over here on the applications page, we've got some tiles for easy access to a handful of the Ingress applications that are on your management cluster, as well as some links to get to some new Git repositories that we create for you when you decide that you want a Kubefirst management cluster. So if we drop into the GitOps repository, there's a handful of details.
A little bit, John, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Appreciate that. So in the GitOps repository, there's really just 3 main directories that are important to understand what's in them. And you'll be able to explore and understand the mechanics behind them with just experimentation and practice. But the 3 important details to call out is we have a registry directory. And the registry is how we get applications and stuff into Argo CD. So anything where we need infrastructure as code, we need a new cluster, we need a new application in that cluster, we need a secret to get pulled out of Vault and put in that cluster, whatever it might be, it's going to be somewhere in the registry. Now in the registry, there's 2 subdirectories. There's environments and clusters, which are usually very tightly coupled. You'll create a development cluster and you'll have a development environment. You'll create a staging cluster and you'll have a staging environment. But at some point, it might be valuable for you to have a new staging cluster, but you want to keep that same staging environment. So we have a loose coupling of the cluster details from the environment details of what you want in those clusters. So that's just an important detail to call out. The clusters directory is where most of your GitOps mechanics are. This is where all the Argo CD apps are. And if you're already familiar with Argo CD, there's a handful of different methodologies that they put forward for how you can get apps into your Kubernetes cluster using Argo CD. Those features, if you will, include application sets. It includes an app of apps pattern. And there's even some new progressive alpha features that are available to get applications into Kubernetes as well, not fully vetted yet. The implementation that Kubefirst does, which is the recommendation that we have for every organization, whether you're an enterprise or a small business with just a couple engineers, is the app of apps pattern. The app of apps pattern allows you an opportunity to organize your applications in a way that has no ceiling ever. So whether you want to move your cluster to another cloud, whether you want to replace your cluster with another cluster in the same cloud, whether you want to suddenly have 2 development environments instead of a single development environment. All of those details are rather easy to implement if you're adopting the app of apps pattern. And we truly have not yet found a limitation on orchestration with the app of apps pattern. And we can't say the same for application sets. There is a ceiling there. It's also very attractive and maybe quite appropriate for your application development use case. But for the platform, it's the app of apps pattern through and through, just to sort of call that out. These directories here represent your clusters and the applications that are in those clusters. So I named my management cluster Management Live for our Kubefirst Live here. And when I click this, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of applications that are probably familiar to most cloud native engineers. You've got your usual suspects like Argo CD, Cert Manager, external DNS, just a lot of great tools that a lot of people are pretty familiar with and typically want in their Kubernetes cluster, according to the CNCF surveys that we religiously monitor.
And John, that made me think about a discussion I had. It was this morning on Twitter, and someone was like, "Hey, you need to create a new cluster. What do you use?" And I say, like, "Yeah, I'm going to use Kubefirst. Maybe I'm biased, but in maximum 30 minutes, I get a full production ready cluster." And I was not clear when I said that, because a full production ready, a production ready cluster, the definition is a little bit it changed depending on who you're talking to. But in my mind, it was clear, and the person would 30 minutes, like any managed cluster Kubernetes services out there, it's between 5 and 10 minutes, and you got your cluster. And when I reply, I was like, no, I'm not talking about a cluster with nothing in it. I'm talking about a cluster with management for my secrets, with Vault, with Atlantis running, with Cert Manager, with and I started to list just some of the thing that we install, configure, that work out of the bat, it's working once you have your cluster. And the person was like, oh shit. Now I need to know more. Now I want a demo. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly what's happening. In a couple of minutes, you get that stack.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. Those conversations are just gold to my heart to hear. The revelation of, wait, it's not just an empty, useless Kubernetes cluster. It's something that I can use that provides value to my organization immediately. Minutes, it's incredible.
This is always what I tell people. I mean, creating a cluster is easy. Bikram was saying, it's one click on DO and you have your cluster. But what's next? You're still not ready to put your application out there. It's everything else that come after that, is the more complicated or complex part of when it comes to cloud native. So anyway, I'm letting you continue, John.
Yeah, so you've got a whole bunch of YAML files in here that represent the applications that are in a cluster, and it works the same way, whether it's management or development or staging, whether it's virtual or physical. It's just a directory. It's got some content in it That content represents Argo CD applications. And those applications, sometimes they are app of apps, which means like this one, for example, this is how we install Ingress Nginx. And it says, hey, this is GitOps. And in order to install this, you're actually going to have to go to a Git repository. It happens to be the same exact Git repository, but it's a different path. So if I copy this path here and drop that right over top the registry, this is actually the of apps part of an app of apps. So every time you hear app of apps, just think about a Git directory and then more resources in a deeper Git directory. That's really all that's going on in the app of apps pattern in Argo CD. And here we can see the actual application is being installed using Helm. And we have some values for how we want to configure that instance of Ingress Nginx. And then we have those same nice, tight configurations for every single application that's a part of the platform, which is how we're able to deliver it in a way that gives you CI/CD that works out of the box, that has secrets management that's hooked into all your tools, that has user management and blah, blah, blah. So that's basically all we have from a Git standpoint. And then the other side of that same coin is how Argo CD reads that Git content. So if we go to that same registry here, you'll find that we have all of the same apps, cross-plane.
Hey, can you guess what I'm going to ask you to do?
We're going to zoom in a little bit, aren't we, buddy? My man. Let me drop back a little bit. Is that still okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So
John,
this is.
Can I ask you one question?
Please.
So obviously, a few users of DigitalOcean may like to know whether there are some templates or something that they can just take and install. Like, let's say they want Nginx, they want. I'm just putting some terms here: Prometheus, Grafana, and Loki,
sure,
and Velero. Do they have to put more work, or is it fairly straightforward?
That's a really good question. And it depends a little bit. The answer is yes and yes. But the first yes is about the management cluster. How do you create a management cluster with different tooling than what we deliver by default? There's a couple answers. One way that you can do that is we have in our upstream, if you go to GitHub, Kubefirst, there's a repository called the GitOps template. The GitOps template is how we build management clusters. So we allow you to fork the GitOps template repository. And then when you run Kubefirst install, there's an advanced section in the user interface, and you can pick your own GitOps template instead of our GitOps template. And it can have additional tools in it that you've already set up. And that's how you can create management clusters with additional tooling. But in addition, if you didn't want to, and it is a little bit heavy-handed to make you maintain your own fork for the creation of a management cluster, another option that you have available is the GitOps catalog. So when you're in your Kubefirst instance here, the applications that I was showing you are the ones that are core applications that we install by default into your platform, that the platform is basically dependent upon when it starts. So all of these you're kind of handcuffed to start out. If you wanted to change it, you would have a little bit of work to do. But if all you wanted to do was add additional stuff like Prometheus, like a Datadog agent, something like that. In fact, let me show you with a Datadog agent. We have that already in our GitOps catalog here. If you click this tab, you'll find a whole bunch of additional cloud native applications that are in this open source repository that we allow you to add additional applications to. So if there's something in here that you wish it had one more thing, even if it's a private thing of yours that you're trying to sell, great contribution to the GitOps catalog, and we would love to have it on the platform. Basically, any of these tools, you can just click the install button. Some of them will require secrets and some of them won't. If it requires a secret or a configuration, it'll prompt you for those values. So like Datadog, for example, it requires a Datadog API key and an app key in order to turn the Datadog agent on. So I'm going to grab some values for that real quick. I have some handy aliases, DD app key. Let me do API key first.
And speaking of Prometheus, Bikram, I'm sorry, I missed an opportunity there. It's in my to-do list to add it to the GitOps catalog since forever. I just like had other priorities, but that's going to be added really, really soon to the GitOps catalog. So yeah.
What are you busy around here, Fred? You're not too busy for Prometheus.
I have a thing or two to do, and you know my manager is quite picky too.
Who is that guy? I'll let me talk to him.
I don't know. Some guy named Dietz, I think.
John Dietz.
That's right. So here we see how the GitOps catalog works when it needs input. We're providing some secrets in this case to install the Datadog agent. When we give it these secrets, we're going to store those secrets in HashiCorp Vault and pull them out in a really nice professional way using external secrets operator so that no secrets are going into your Git repository. When I hit add here, we can see if I go back to the installed applications and I hop into HashiCorp Vault in secrets, we'll find a new Datadog agent in here, and it has an API key and an app key. I'm not going to show you on screen because they are sensitive values to me, but you could hit the eyeballs here or copy them to your clipboard or whatever you need. These secrets in Vault are what we pull out in order to install the Datadog agent so that it has the secrets that it needs in order to light up your environment. And the end result is that in Datadog, if I were to hop in and look at the Kubernetes dashboard, let's use the overview one's a good one. And if I choose the management live cluster, it takes a second for that to start hydrating. We can check back in on that when we come back around. I had just removed it before the live stream. So we should start to see that data flowing in just a handful of minutes once it starts hitting the indices. And that's how you're going to get observability, logging, an understanding of what's going on in your containers. You can like run top against your containers and see what it's doing. It'll also give you some really nice high-level metrics on how much you're utilizing the nodes that you've provisioned, how much additional elbow room you have, and stuff like that. So that's really just a quick example of the GitOps catalog and how you can add more stuff to your management cluster as long as it's in the GitOps catalog. And then the third answer that I have for you, Bikram, is about the other clusters, because the management cluster is that's your control plane, and it requires a little bit of different rules for its orchestration and provisioning than workload clusters do, because workload clusters get to depend on the fact that you have that management control plane already. And because of that, it's much easier to manage your workload clusters in creative ways. So just earlier, we created this live stream cluster here. And the live stream cluster, if I click this and look at it in Argo CD, this live stream cluster has a handful of applications in it: external DNS, Cert Manager, Ingress Nginx, but you'll notice it doesn't have all the same stuff as our management cluster. There's no Atlantis, there's no Argo CD in here, there's no Argo workflows in here, there's no GitHub, there's no GitLab. So what is driving the applications that get delivered to your workload cluster? And the answer for that is really cool. We have a fleet management capability in Kubefirst, where in this same GitOps repository that we give you, we covered a couple of the we covered registry. There's also a templates directory here. And this is where we organize fleet management. So this defines the rules for what constitutes a workload cluster, which is a physical cluster, or what constitutes a V cluster, which is a virtual cluster. So the applications that are in here will include things like how the infrastructure is created. Literally, what is the Terraform to create a workload cluster? And it also includes things like external DNS. If you wanted Datadog to be in every single cluster that you ever create, it's just a matter of dropping Datadog in this folder. And then when you go through Kubefirst and say, I want a new cluster, it's going to have Datadog because that's what your fleet management says is supposed to be in your workload clusters. So that whole implementation, we have a whole bunch of stories that we're still looking to implement on fleet management. Right now, it's basically in its MVP form. And we're very actively looking for feedback from the user community on what would be most valuable to have in that feature set. But so far, the reaction has been incredible. That's basically exactly what everybody's looking for. You can just create a Kubefirst management control plane, and then you can organize even a different management cluster if you want in these template directories, and then you can create whatever clusters you want with whatever tools you want, however you want. And we're not involved at all other than the orchestration of detokenizing any variables that you have in those templates and making sure that they apply correctly and get orchestrated correctly in Argo CD and hooked into Vault correctly and all that kind of stuff. So it's a neat fleet management implementation, a little bit of a complicated answer. I apologize for that.
Can I just add one more sentence to this?
Yes, please.
You gave a lot of good options, but the one that you spoke about where like you can have templates in the management cluster, that's amazing for standardization and automation.
Yeah.
Imagine how many customers that we see who have clusters in different regions. They roll out clusters on a per customer basis, and
that's exactly right.
If there is a source of truth, and if you are able to take advantage of Git to automate it, UI is always great, but this is like great for automation and standardization.
I really appreciate you saying so, and appreciate your vision as well to understand the impact of that, because you're exactly right. We talk to consultants all the time that are doing, Kubernetes installs for their downstream clients, and they want to be able to provision the same type of cluster, but in separate accounts for each one of their clients, or they need to isolate this, but really they're just looking for the same thing over and over and over again. With this implementation of fleet management, it's very simple to set up. You're just dealing with a Git repository. You're just dropping some Argo CD application YAML files in that directory, and anything that needs to be a variable, you just get to put this simple little token in it, and it's magically a variable that can be used for cluster provisioning. So that's pretty neat. So that got into fleet management. I think we covered that well enough that we probably don't have to circle back to that. And let's look next at the rest of the Kubefirst platform. So we touched on Vault for a quick second. This is where we're keeping all your secrets. This is also where we're keeping all your users and user groups for OIDC and single sign-on. And we have live streams that are dedicated to that entire, in fact, pretty much everything I say here, there's going to be a 1-hour show on every single piece of technology on the Kubefirst platform. So if any of this feels like we glossed over it and really you just needed better depth, it's there. You just have to look it up. It's on YouTube. Yeah, we've got basically a secret for each thing that needs a secret, and every secret's in Vault. So it's not a thing where we have, some of your secrets in your cloud and some of your secrets over here, some of your secrets in your CI tool. No, Vault is the source of truth throughout the entire platform. That's not to say that other technologies don't have secrets. They do, but they pull them from Vault always. So this is your source of truth. And just to sort of show you in a demonstrable way what a secret looks like in Vault, this one's not a real secret. This is for a sample application that we have called Metaphor. And Metaphor is just a sample Node.js app It comes with the Kubefirst platform as well. It's this link right here. It's got its own Git repository. It's got some source code, and it's got all the mechanics that it needs to build containers, build Helm charts, integrate with Nginx, integrate with Cert Manager, integrate with external DNS. So it gives you a real, tangible example of how an application builds and runs on the Kubefirst platform. Internally, we love Metaphor as an operational tool because we're always messing around with CI. And when we mess around with CI and we want to change the rules, we want to test it on an application that is not a production application, because we need that for production. Metaphor is a great vetting ground to experiment with CI, make sure that you've got it right. If you want to show your development team how observability works, add observability to Metaphor, and then you have a real tangible example that you can show your engineers how that works. So we love Metaphor at Kubefirst. A nice tool to have in your cloud native arsenal. And with this Metaphor application, we have it set up in such a way where, let me go to the README here and just make a quick edit on the README, and I'm going to commit this directly to the main branch. Boop. And when I do that, we're going to see a GitHub action kick off automatically. In a real world environment, this would be a pull request that got reviewed and then got merged into the main branch. The point is, the way our automation works on Metaphor, as soon as the main branch gets touched on any file, a publish job is going to kick off. Now, when we look at this publish job, and we're looking at this in GitHub also, the equivalent story also exists in GitLab. It's just GitLab runners instead of GitHub Action Runner controllers. But in either circumstance, your runners and your jobs are running in your management cluster. So they're under your control. They have access to the secrets the way that you want to keep them, and you're not exposing that to the outside world. And when we look at a publish execution, we'll see that this is going through. It looks like it's identified a handful of details about what repo it is and what the SHA is that it's building against. And then in a handful of minutes, it's going to start kicking off a Docker build operation where it's going to build and publish that to, in this case, it's going to be to our GitHub registry. And you would think that this was perhaps just some GitHub action that was published that we're invoking, but it's not. What we're actually doing is we're leaning on GitHub actions so that we have this nice, rich experience for the developer in the developer's environment. Developers want to be in GitHub. They want to see that when jobs are executing about their application, they want that feedback in their Git provider. But that doesn't mean that the mechanics of how to build a container and how to build a Helm chart have to be in GitHub Actions. And in this case, they're not. Instead, we're using Argo workflows to do things like build containers, build Helm charts, do GitOps delivery to a development staging production environment. And to see what that looks like, if I hop over here to Argo workflows, and you'll get this message every time when you're not signed in. You can just ignore that. But when you log in with a single sign-on, you can see that there's a job running here. And right now it's running a published container. If we look at some previous executions like the original Metaphor publish, you can see that there's a whole bunch of things that this Argo workflows pipeline does. It publishes a container.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Fred. It does, it publishes a container, it checks out your code, it gets the initial chart version, it sets the next chart version with a release candidate with a short SHA from the commit that was committed to Git, and then it publishes a Helm chart, and then it moves on to the next step of doing GitOps delivery to that next environment. And when we, you could just use Argo workflows, but then you don't get any of that feedback to your developers in their Git provider in GitHub. So we've integrated it in such a way where Argo workflows is available in your management cluster. GitHub Action Runner Controller or GitLab is also in your cluster, and GitHub or GitLab calls Argo workflows to run the automation and then we provide feedback through that implementation to the end user. So if I back up just a little bit and look at a prior execution, just because it'll be a little bit further along, I'll be able to show what I want to show. If I hop into publish, here you can see that as it goes through, down the road just a little bit, it'll change color from green to orange, and then it'll change color again back to green. What's going on there is every time it changes color, that's where did my Argo workflows go?
Too many tabs open.
I do have way too many tabs open. Let me make the problem worse. So that's representative of when you're looking at Argo in here. Each time you're running a step or a workflow template, it's running in its own individual container, and those individual hops from container to container to container are very, very nicely represented in GitHub. You can see clearly when you're jumping from one container to the next with that color shifting. So we happen to really like Argo workflows. You're not required to use Argo workflows. It's a really great workflow engine. It's great for machine learning workflows. It's great for AI stuff. It's also great for CI. I wouldn't use it for CD. I would recommend GitOps for CD, but it's great for CI, building images and setting desired state stuff in your GitOps repositories. And we like it because Argo Workflows is truly Kubernetes native. The GitLab runner, the GitHub Action Runner controller, they're cloud native. They will run very well in Kubernetes, but they're not Kubernetes native. They weren't built for Kubernetes. And what we like a lot about the Kubernetes native Argo Workflows implementation is just the nice tight controls that you can put over what parts of your CI has access to what secrets, because it helps you guard correctly against bad actors in your CI ecosystem, which is really important to do just as a general blanket rule. So I think that's all I want to show about the CI implementation of updating Metaphor and how that integrates with Argo workflows and builds containers and builds updates. The end result is that if you click this cluster from management live to development, there's a Metaphor instance that runs in development, and you can click the link for that here. And Metaphor is just a simple little application. It will show you what chart version you're running. It'll show you some details about your secrets and about your config maps, some stuff like that. And really, that's only there so that you can confirm to yourself that your CI operations are working and whatever. So really cool implementation on the CI front with GitHub and or GitLab integrated with Argo workflows for GitOps delivery to development, staging, production. That's all we have to say about CI/CD, and we completely agree that your opinion about CI is going to be different than our opinion about CI, and that is okay. You don't have to use Argo workflows. You don't have to use GitHub Actions. You don't have to use GitLab Runner. You don't have to use any of that stuff. But if it would be valuable for you to understand the workings of GitOps delivery to DevStage Prod, you have a really fast starting point until you have replaced Argo workflows with something that you like better, like Jenkins or whatever your hang up is.
John, everything you've shown so far is working in a DigitalOcean cluster. That was
that's exactly right. And that's all amazing. Of those mechanics are stuff that you get out of the box for free, and it's always going to be free. And so you can use it. It's a free lunch. There are not many free lunches on the internet anymore. There's always a catch, and there's just no catch here. We've been working for free for over 4 years to deliver the best cloud native patterns that we can establish. And they are exceptional. So we hope it's valuable to you. You get it for free. And then we hope to earn your business someday in our user interface by implementing physical cluster management the way that we do. So yeah, that's basically our CI story. The last story that I wanted to show before we basically call it a wrap is the infrastructure as code story. So we have in this management cluster both Crossplane and Atlantis managing different parts of the platform. We use Crossplane for our cluster provisioning operations by default. So when you create a new virtual cluster, when you create a new physical cluster, it is Crossplane that's using a Terraform provider so that we can create that Terraform execution in GitOps. And we're allowing Argo CD and Crossplane to govern those resources. Now, separate from that story is the story that we have for all of our other infrastructure as code, which is also Terraform, but it's not governed by Crossplane and Argo CD. It's governed by Atlantis, which a lot of people like. And we wanted to be able to show both variations because they're both very powerful and they both have great use cases. But sometimes you want to have a human involved in the process of making changes to your infrastructure as code. Sometimes you don't. For example, if you want for your organization to be able to implement developer clusters, where every developer just gets an ephemeral cluster anytime they want it, and then it disappears. And if they lost that cluster, nobody's going to cry. They can just create another one. It's no big deal. In that type of an environment, managing your infrastructure as code as raw GitOps in Crossplane and Argo CD, it's incredibly powerful and fast and frictionless. And it allows you to create that cluster and tear down that cluster without complicated, bureaucratic, if you will, peer review, human oriented operations in the mix. Because every time you bring a human into the mix, that means that you're going to have to stop, slow down your flow until that human does an action, and then the flow can continue. So if you don't want that, you want GitOps with Argo CD and Crossplane, but you're also handing over the responsibility to those technologies of making the decision that it's okay to delete this resource without even asking. Now, if that feels scary to you because you're thinking about your production cluster, it should. Your production cluster, it's very good to have some additional layers of governance to make sure that if the machine decides that it's time to destroy that cluster, it needs one human to say, yeah, I agree. That looks like a good plan to me. So let's take a look real quick at what those two stories look like. We already showed the GitOps variation with cluster management when we created that physical cluster. That was just boop in a user interface, and then some GitOps got added to our GitOps repository that included some Terraform that created the cluster and then bootstrapped the cluster with a whole bunch of applications. Really cool, very frictionless, no approvals, no human review of what Crossplane was going to do or anything like that. It just creates stuff, and it's incredible when that's what you want. But sometimes you want a human involved. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So the third directory of our GitOps repository is the Terraform directory. And this is where the non-crossplaned content goes. There's also important to call out an Atlantis YAML in the repository root. And this represents the directories that Atlantis cares about. So when you get your GitOps repo from a Kubefirst install, this is just the default. It'll have your details in it, but like maybe you didn't pick DigitalOcean, maybe your GitLab instead of GitHub, but whatever the infrastructure as code is that was appropriate for your environment will be defined in this Atlantis YAML. And if you want to expand that, it's just a matter of grabbing the section of code, copying it, pasting it, give it a new directory. Now you've got a new Terraform entry point that Atlantis is managing, and it can be for whatever you want, your database instances, your buckets, your whatever you need. So let's dive into the Terraform implementation of one of those implementations. Let's look at Vault. Vault's pretty easy. So here we have some details about our OIDC clients, our OIDC groups. This is the details of like how we have Vault serving as your OIDC provider throughout the platform. So if you ever needed changes to what groups you want in Vault or how your users are implemented in Vault, that's all Terraform in this Vault directory. Down here, there's a secrets.tf And it includes some example secrets for metaphor. Like here's our production metaphor secrets. So if I copy this content, let me hit edit file, and I'll drop that right there is fine. And instead of production, we're going to change 1, 2, 3, 4 to live stream. So now we have a new secret that we're proposing we want in HashiCorp Vault. It's not in Vault. If I hop in Vault here and go to secret, there will be nothing in here for oh no, did I lose my tab? I can't lose my tab. So there will be nothing in here for this secret live stream metaphor. It's just not in there. So let's make that a real thing that we produce with infrastructure as code in a way that's governed by Atlantis. It's a very simple process, and all this stuff is also pre-wired into your Kubefirst platform when you do an install from scratch. So for this, I'm just going to commit the change. This is the important detail. Do not commit directly to main because Atlantis only cares about pull requests, because Atlantis wants you to have a very good review process for your IAC changes. So I'm going to say new secret for live stream. And when I propose this change and create the pull request, we're going to see some automation kick off, but this is not GitHub action automation at all. Instead, this is a webhook that gets invoked, that's wired into your GitOps repository that invokes Atlantis, which is running in your management cluster. So we can take a look at what is happening in Atlantis. For our Terraform users out there, this is all probably going to look pretty familiar. Basically, Atlantis does nothing more than manage the lock state of who is making changes to what Terraform entry points. It makes sure that only one person can make a change at a time to any given Terraform entry point. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had the privilege of seeing a Terraform state file go corrupt from 2 applies at the same time, but it is a nasty scenario. So Atlantis takes care of that for you. And the end result is basically just that you have in your pull request, if I do a hard refresh here, you can see that it produces a Terraform plan, but it puts the comment directly in your GitHub pull request for your reviewer to review. And they can say, well, if we were to apply this change, it looks like a Vault generic secret would be created called live stream metaphor. That's not good enough, they would say. That's a bad typo. But for this example, we'll just pretend that wasn't the case. And the rule is that once it's been approved by your reviewer, they type Atlantis apply. And with that comment, Terraform is going to attempt to do a Terraform apply on your behalf. And if it's successful, it'll automatically merge the pull request, say that it was successful. It'll give you the output of that execution. Like here, for example, let me hard refresh one more time. It ran the apply. Apply was complete. 1 was added. None were changed or destroyed. It automatically merged. The pull request was closed. The branch was deleted. Everything's cleaned up. And the end result is over here in Vault. If I go back to secrets, then down here, there should be a live stream incorrectly spelled with a metaphor application with some secrets in it. So that's the flow when you want Atlantis to govern your IAC changes. It allows you a really nice way to get the rest of your team involved in the peer review process, make sure nobody's making any mistakes. In my opinion, it's really important to have Atlantis governing your production resources, your security resources, your IAM resources. Those are the types of details that you want to make sure don't accidentally ever change because of a bug in Crossplane or because of a nuance in Argo CD that you weren't ready for. And Atlantis implementation will always afford you that opportunity to say, hey, I'm about to make this change. Are you sure you're good with this? And you can say yes or no to Atlantis. Whereas cross-playing with Argo CD, it's just going to apply the change. And if that was a problem for you, then you're going to have to revert the change and get it back to its previous state. So,
and you're gonna have a trace also in GitHub with the PR, and like you have more information. So like it's the GitOps way to go. And now you demonstrate about secrets, but like within Kubefirst, as you said, like we can manage users, and you can even manage repositories that are part of like your ecosystem with Terraform within Kubefirst, but also with Atlantis. So
yep. So, I think
we've done it all, John.
Yeah, the only thing I could circle back to, and I'm scared to, but I'm gonna do it anyway because it's Kubefirst Live, and we don't care when we show the cracks in our armor. Is did Datadog ever wake up and show us anything valuable out of our management cluster? I bet it did. It looks like our Datadog agent is alive and healthy in the cluster. And if I go to Datadog now, I should be able to hop in to my Kubernetes dashboard. And do I have a cluster of management live coming through with some new data? I sure do. If we look at the last 1 hour, this was the period here before we implemented the new agent. And now all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of new agents and we've got everything reporting the way that we wanted to report. So we're in good shape.
Amazing. So on that note, any last word, Bikram? I know we talked a lot about Kubefirst, but like everything that John demonstrated was running on DigitalOcean clusters.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved it. And what really appealed to me is how many customers that I speak to who have the need of a like templated cluster, not one, not two, but many.
Yeah.
And then it's not like it's hard-coded, it's extremely customizable. And on top of that, if the customers want, they can also customize by adding more add-ons, right? The UI that you showed.
That's right.
And then it addresses not only the GitOps, but also the whole day-to thing, because as part of the templated cluster deployment, you can roll out everything. I did feel that people who are new to GitOps and new to Terraform and programming, they might get a little bit overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be very important for us to share this recording and the nice walkthrough that you did. We can add that in the marketplace for the Kubefirst. And then if needed, we can plan for additional tutorials based on the customer demand.
Yeah.
But I definitely see this resonating with not only DigitalOcean, but also other providers, Kubernetes users as well.
Thank you for saying so, Bikram.
Wonderful.
Fred, we cannot wrap this up without me showing my favorite part of DigitalOcean. If I may.
You need to do it really quickly because there is a hard stop in exactly 1 minute. So
1
you
minute.
have 10 seconds.
Go ahead, please.
So it goes like this. Share and window and entire screen over there. Go. And DigitalOcean. And let's do this, DigitalOcean. And Management Live here. Check this out, everybody. If you're not working in the DigitalOcean cloud, you have to see this. So I have a cluster here. I don't want it anymore. When I go to destroy it, what does it ask me? Oh my goodness. It asks me about my load balancers and my volumes. And I just get to go boop, 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 boop. And they're all gone. I haven't seen a single cloud do that as frictionlessly. On our engineering team, we deeply appreciate that user experience. So keep up the great work, Bikram. Fred, if there's 10 seconds left, you got to send us home with a dad joke.
I'm going to do that, Bikram. 10 more seconds. So, folks, what is a web developer's favorite tea?
A web developer's favorite tea?
Yeah.
Sleepy time?
No, that would have been a good answer, but that would have been not as funny as the one I'm going to say. It's URL gray.
Oh.
So on that note, everybody, thanks again, Bikram, for joining us. That was a pleasure to have
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for sharing the DO love and every like interesting product that people needs to be successful. Thanks again, John. On that note, folks, thanks for joining live. Thanks for watching the recording, and see you in 2 weeks for the next show. So have a good one.